Man, I've been stuck like this. Past week? I was like, man, when I woke up today, I was like, yo, I think it's finally time. I think I've let everything sink in. Where I can buy Hajimari and get started. But then I came on here to record. I pressed the red button. I sat down in the chair. And my mind went blank. You feel me? My mind went blank. Because attempting to process everything that went down in this game will force you to like have a malfunction. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna force you to just lose whatever is left of your soul that wasn't already taken from this magnificent game. Whatever's left, just in shambles. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, dude, but I'm gonna try, bro. I'm gonna try because I need to talk about this game, dog. I've kept it in, only really talking to my close friends who have also completed the game. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today upon completion. And yes, when I mean completed, I haven't gotten all the trophies, but I have seen it all. I have seen it all at this point, man. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk today about the Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 4. I'm gonna go through a spoiler-free section first. And then I have a notebook because there's so many things that I want to talk about. I have a notebook right here just to see if I can keep myself on track. At the very least, to keep some sort of cohesive thought going on throughout the course of this video. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to structure this video like I did the last one. Where in the last one I was able to talk about a lot of my favorite moments in order. I don't know if I can do that this time, man. I'm not going to be able to contain it. Once it starts rolling, and once the memories start flowing back in of all the greatness that took place within this video game, there's going to be no order. There's going to be absolutely no order. So, listen to me, man. During this spoiler-free section, for those of you that have not purchased this game yet, and or maybe you haven't even gotten into this series yet, alright? Number one, get into Trails, bro. Take it from me, man. As someone who started this journey this year and caught up this year. It may seem long, alright? But trust me, it's worth it, bro. At the very least, if it's something that resonates with you, you're gonna see just how incredible it is, man. If it doesn't resonate with you, then it doesn't resonate with you. But if it does end up resonating with you, it's gonna be peak. It's gonna be peak, man. And so, listen, dog, if you are sitting there contemplating, where do I start? You know, what are the prerequisites for playing this game in particular in Cold Steel 4? My biggest recommendation is starting from the very beginning with Sky FC. I'm working your way from the Sky trilogy to the Crossbell duology, and then the 4-piece of Cold Steel, right? That's the best, especially if you want to get every single possible thing out of this game. Because this game has callbacks to the very beginning. I'm talking about the very, very beginning, alright? But if you don't have access to those games, and there's no way you could play them, then at the very least play the previous 3 Cold Steel games before you hop into this one, man. Because the amount of value and emotional attachment that the journey itself gives you from Cold Steel 1 until this game cannot be duplicated by a summary. It can't be duplicated by a Wikipedia article. It can't be duplicated by the summaries. Even though the summaries are pretty good, they can't be duplicated by those summaries at the beginning of the games. You have to have that emotional attachment to fully 100% get everything out of this game that it wants to give you, man. So don't cheat yourself out of that experience. At the very least, bro, if you have access to a PS4 and you can't play any of the previous games, at the very least play the Cold Steel series, bro. At the very, very least, right? And hopefully, man, if you ever get a chance, please go back and play those Crossbell and Sky games, because they're incredible as well, man. And there's one game in particular, and it's kind of crazy that I'm saying this, because going into this, especially whenever I started it, I never would have thought that this would be the case. I would have thought that it would have been the other ones that were more important, but I'll talk about it a little later on. But I feel like Sky the Third in particular, I realized how much I really adored that game, and possibly how important that game is going to be to the overall series. Because after finishing this game, it gave me the same feeling that I had the farther I progressed in One Piece, and I looked back on Skypiea. And I continued to look back, and I was like, Flagnarts. Like, I feel like the overall importance to the lore and the world of the series, like, because of, or I should say, that arc, like, gave us a taste, gave us a hint that we're gonna look back on it years from now and be like, Flagnards, look at everything that was shown there, and just how important all of that stuff was for the overall overarching story and world of the series. I now feel that way about the third. I think it's that important, man. And we'll talk about that later on. But stuff like that is why I say that before you get into or play Cold Steel 4, play the games, man. Because not only is the journey worth it, but like I said, to get everything out of it, especially for here, since I'm mainly a One Piece channel. Y'all know that in One Piece, man, you can't skip any arcs, because Oda puts every little detail into every little slot, right, and that he possibly can. The Trail series is very similar when it comes to the detail put into the world, into the characters, into the things they state, and how one thing they say in one game comes into fruition several games later and stuff like that, man. So if you value that type of stuff, please don't skip on any of the games, man. But speaking on Cold Steel 4, as spoiler free as possible, ladies and gentlemen, like, when it comes to climaxes, man, y'all know how this works, bro, in this franchise, dog. They're always insane. They're always fantastic. But this one's the granddaddy of the climaxes, man. This one is the, like, dog, when I tell y'all that my Santa hat was flying everywhere throughout the entire game, where my emotions were pouring out, chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter, and I was like, I don't know how this continues to progressively get me more and more invested and more emotional as it goes on. Like, I thought I peaked several times throughout the game, and to know, at least for me, that at the very end it truly peaks is a testament to this game. It's a testament to this game, man, because goodness, dog, from height peaks, emotional peaks, from a character state, like, I mean, I don't know, bro. I don't know, man. Like, it's getting dangerous. It's getting dangerous, man. Because Metal Gear for me has remained untouched for so many years, at least as a franchise. Like, I feel like I still hold, Final Fantasy VII, for example, as a single game higher than I do the Metal Gear franchise. But, like, man, I think Trails is number one now, bro, after this game. I mean, I'm gonna hold off after I beat Hajimari on several things, because, and that's the very first thing that I'm gonna talk about once the spoiler-free section ends, is gonna be my boy Rean. All right, we're gonna talk about the GOAT himself when the moment the spoiler-free section ends. So, yeah, man, I think after playing this game, I think once I finish Hajimari, actually I even started, but once I get into it and I finish it, I'll have a better grasp on how I truly feel, because right now Trails is easily my #1 favorite gaming franchise, bro. I mean, it's not even close. Like, and the thing is, the reason why I'm holding off on it is I know how I am with recency bias. There are certain things that I end up changing my mind on as time goes on, but there are certain special experiences that once I feel that way, it never goes back to feeling the way that it did before. And I'm starting to feel like Trails might actually be my One Piece of video games, where One Piece for so long has remained consistently my #1, and even though I've experienced things that might even have like peaks as high or whatever the case may be, my emotional attachment to One Piece just leads it to nothing can pass it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very, very difficult to ever get something like that, and I feel like I have now reached that same point with Trails. But like I said, because I've only been with it for a couple months, I don't know how I'll feel later on down the line. That's just how I feel right now. But if you're asking right now, man, God, I mean, yo, it's just everything about it, dog. And then this game in particular is Lagnards, dude. I gotta talk about it, man. I don't know how I can speak on it staying spoiler free. Like, shout out to all the YouTube channels that managed to make spoiler free reviews, because that ain't me. That ain't me, son. Because I don't know what I would say. Like, I would sound like a broken record, like I do on everything else that I've talked about in the Trails games. Music, GOAT. The battles, GOAT. The characters, GOAT. The story, greatness. Like, I don't know what else to say. Go out, play this franchise, play Cold Steel 4, and if you haven't done so already, this game, literally, I'm talking about from the moment that you press start button until the end of the game, is just out of this world magnificent, man. And if you are a fan of Final Fantasy VI, like I am, where I hold that game on the very highest pedestal, all right, that is in like my triple S tier of video games, and I'm gonna talk about that a few times later on the spoiler section. But that's in my triple S tiers, not only just games, like just in storytelling in general. Like, that game is just perfection. That is like Squaresoft's magnum opus. I mean, it's hard for me to say that because of my emotional attachment connection to FF7, you know, that's what started it all. But FF6 is so masterful, bro, and Chrono Trigger as well, but like FF6, right? If you loved that game, all right, if you really loved that game, and you know how that game is split in two, think about Cold Steel 3 and 4 in that same manner. Cold Steel 3 is the first half of Final Fantasy VI, and Cold Steel 4 is the second half of Final Fantasy VI. And I mean that wholeheartedly, son. Down to the credits. Down to the credits. And that is the highest amount of praise that I can ever give a video game, bro. If y'all know me and this channel and how much I love that game, that is the highest amount of praise that I can give a game, bro. So, without further ado, let's get into the spoiler section, alright? So, I'm going to assume that everyone from here on out has played Cold Steel 4 to the very end, alright? I'm not going to remember everything. I'm not even going to try to remember everything. Anything that I don't remember to talk about, hopefully later on in the line, I'll be able to talk about Trails a lot more on the channel. I'll be able to talk about stuff that I didn't get to talk about in this video. What I want to talk about is the things that really, really, really stood out to me that I have not been able to stop thinking about ever since I finished playing this game. Alright? So it's not going to be as structured as the last one, but I can't help it because, son, this game was insane. This game was insane. And before we get into the story and everything that actually took place within the game, I want to talk about one character in particular. I want to talk about a character that this game elevated. Already when I finished CS3, I was like, he's right there to me with Lloyd. Lloyd already, I had him I know like mosaics, especially in the anime side of Twitter, is a thing that is becoming pretty popular. Like the 3x3s of favorite characters, scenes, whatever the case may be, right? Lloyd was already up in there. And when I finished Cold Steel 2, I was like, Rean's up in there too. And then Cold Steel 3 definitely made him up in there. But what Cold Steel 4 did was make Rean go from where he would be like at the bottom half of the mosaic. He put him at the very, 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 very top of the mosaic. Because this man, Rean Schwarzer, son, let me tell you something. Big Boss and Yoshida Shoyo. Big Boss from Metal Gear Solid. Specifically Metal Gear Solid 3 and Peace Walker, right? And if you want to count MGS5 too, sure. Right, sure. Big Boss, man. Naked Snake is my #1 favorite character in anything ever. Specifically because of his character arc. That is the most compelling character arc that I have ever seen put to any type of story. That junk shakes me to my core with how masterfully Kojima told that story. Yoshida Shoyo follows a very similar line of... a very similar path, but it differentiates a bit. Like, these are two characters that I hold in very, very high regard. Right? Very high regard. To me, Rean is now with those legends. To me, Rean is now with them. Not only is his path similar to theirs, in a way that it goes down something similar and then something happens that differentiates that path, and is definitely differentiates from those two characters. But it's in the manner that it is done, especially in this game, that really puts Rean on that like quadruple S tier for me of favorite characters of all time. You know, when I first started my Japanese media journey with Final Fantasy VII, I was attracted first and foremost to the rawness and swag. Even now, if a character can have anything, right? A character can have this amount of things I don't like about them, this amount of things, whatever the case may be. If they have rawness and swag, I can forgive any possible thing that I find wrong with the character. Let them have rawness and swag. I'll be like, yo, they're a goat. I don't care. That's just the way that I am. That's the way that I grew up in this medium. I grew up with Dragon Ball and with Final Fantasy, right? So it was all rawness and swag, and then by the time that I grew up to a certain age, I understood that there was more depth to the characters and whatnot. But what first got me into this medium, or I should say into just Japanese media in general, is the rawness and swag, the transformations, the fights, the going up in like swimwear. So, in the way that I said in the last video where Trails made me feel like a kid again, it's in the very same light to where Rean seemed like a character that if I would have gotten into the series when I was like 7 years old or whatever, like 10, whatever the case may be, Rean would have been my dude. But he would have been my dude because of the rawness and swag, with surface level understanding of what his character had to go through. But now as I stand here, as an adult, having experienced this, now we go from the rawness and swag, and we add upon these layers of this character that has gone through so much in this story, bro. And this character that has continued to have stuff piled on him, and these obstacles continuing to be put in front of him. And he overcomes them, but not on his own, but with the help of others, dog. Now listen. Like I was saying before, bro. Shoyo and Big Boss have remained so clear for so long because of the attachment I have to their character arcs. They're arcs that are very specific, but they're also different. And I really, really love the way that they're told. What really just causes me to, especially, this is the thing I've thought about the most in these past couple of days, is how close Rean could have been to becoming like Big Boss, man. When you think back to the end of Cold Steel 2, and you think back to the fact that he was made this hero after having taken out Crow. Like, my man wanted to go out and save him, he didn't want to kill him. And the fact that everything happened in the way that it did in that finale, and the shocking twists happening there with like Osborn being his pops, everything going completely wrong, or because the vibe up until that point was so uplifting. You know, he started off this entire journey on his own at the beginning of Cold Steel 2 and had to get everything back. And so when he got everything back, he felt invincible again. He felt like, yo, I can take on the world. We'll be up in like somewhere. We're gonna go get Crow back and it'll be all good. But then at the end of Cold Steel 2, you get something very, very different. And Rean is presented with a challenge that every young adult has to eventually, you know, come and face. That one decision that could very well drastically change your life in one way, shape, or the other. And the thing is with Rean and the way that this series handled him at the end of CS2, when you fight him as Lloyd, I remember the first time that I read that, I was like, or that I played that, the reason why that stuck out to me so much is because I really felt like I was once again in the shoes of, don't tell me somebody else was lost because of something like this once again, man. And it really started hurting. That's why I think the end of CS2 hit me as hard as it did after that, whenever he's reunited with his classmates, but it's not the same. It's not the same, man. And so when Cold Steel 3 rolls around, and you see that he's gone off on these missions, working for the Gov, and doing his thing, but you see that there's still a piece that is still missing from Rean, man. There's still certain things that aren't quite right. You know that he's the same individual. You know that he still has that will of steel that no one can take away from him. But that one part and that one portion continues to eat away at him. He could have saved Crow. He could have done this right, this wrong, whatever the case may be. He's living with regret. And with his students, as he continues to pick them up, they pick him up as well, man. And you go throughout all of Cold Steel 3, and at the very, very end, he loses himself to the rage and to the anger. Causes the end of the world, bro. We're talking about an individual here who has already overcome the fact that he has this ogre ability in him. Has already overcome the fact that he is seen as a hero when he knows deep within his heart that this was all a plan set up for him to be the figurehead of something, so that this thing that was originally intended to be against the Erebonian Empire would be used for them. And he couldn't say no, because he wanted to protect everybody else in Class 7 and protect the honor and legacy of Crow. So it's like, now he has to bear that responsibility as well. So he's bearing all these burdens, and the burdens continue to grow and grow. And now you add something on top of that, to where because of those very same burdens, and because he allowed all of that to come upon himself, and he didn't want anybody else's help, now is the granddaddy of all burdens. The man has technically killed Valimar, while transforming into this other state, and has now caused the beginning of the end of Cold Steel and some end of Evangelion stuff. It's his fault. He's the one that couldn't control himself at the end. And so when Cold Steel 4 starts, and you start off from the perspective of the new Class 7 and their journey to get Ash and Musei back, and the stuff that they state, knowing, or I should say, showing us as the viewer just how much of an impact Rean has had on them, in the same way Rean had an impact on the old Class 7, the glue that really keeps everybody together. But when you start seeing that in Juna, and you start seeing that in Kurt, and you start seeing that in Altina, and then you eventually go to Hamel and you see it in Ash, and that was when it really started popping, where I was like, no, this stuff is it. And then you see it in Musei, who is also attempting to take all of this pain onto herself as well. But son, let me tell you something, bro. When all that culminates, and you see they're going throughout their own journey and their own struggles as well, because they feel like it's their fault that they let Rean down, so they're gonna go and rescue him. They're gonna go get him back from all this darkness. Gonna go get him and free him and tell him, like, yo, you ain't gonna go through this alone, my boy. You got us. You got us, man. And so you go out through that entire first, like, 20 to 25 hour, 30 hour part of the game on that alone. And so by the time you get to the fragments section, now before I get into the fragments section, Before this, there are 2 scenes in all of video games. One of them is from the end of Metal Gear Solid 3, and technically, see, that's the hockey coming into the house. I'm talking about greatness, and now stuff is falling. But anyways, the end of like MGS3 and MGS2, they're out of this world, incredible to me. But I think there's one scene that has stuck with me throughout all of these years, and that's the scene in Final Fantasy VII. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, just in case you're playing the remake and you don't want to hear any spoilers of what's going to happen in the future. But there is a certain point in time where Cloud and one other individual are in this altered state of mind where Cloud also needs to make a decision upon himself in order to gain that sense of freedom and that sense of true self. And then the declaration that he makes right after that is arguably one of my favorite scenes in anything ever, but most certainly one of my favorite scenes in video games. And it's a scene that has always stuck with me throughout all of these years, and whenever I grew older to understand that after having gone through my own situations and problems, that scene has remained one of my favorite scenes of all time. That scene for me is the equivalent of like episode 26 from Evangelion, or like the impact that has had on people. And it's had a massive impact on me as well, but you know the impact that Evangelion has had on people. And like Shinji Ikari, how big he was for a lot of kids growing up in that era. That's how Cloud Strife is for me, man. So the fact that what I'm about to say is what I'm about to say is, I mean this wholeheartedly, man. When you enter the fragments section and you start seeing this entire journey come into fruition, and I'll talk about a few of the things here in a little bit, but I want to focus specifically on Rean, man. Because you see him, and shout out to Celine, the MVP, continuing to stay with my boy throughout all of the struggles, throughout all the tribulations, throughout everything. Continuing to stay with my boy. So you're playing as Rean in this stage who has forgotten his name. And he's going out, he's still in this state. He can't control it at all, but you see that he's aware of what's going on. So he's doing his thing. Eventually Crow comes back in, and what's so beautiful about it, right, is that while you're going throughout the entire section, you start seeing the journey come back. You know, Celine, who was so important to him at the end of Cold Steel 1, at the beginning of Cold Steel 2, is helping him throughout this entire portion. Old Class 7 and New Class 7 are supporting him from the outside, but they haven't gotten to him yet. Celine's with him, though, in the same way that it was in Cold Steel 2. Celine's with him, but he has the heart and the thoughts of everyone else. Then he gets to Crow, where he also met 1v1 with Crow, with nobody else being there. And the conversations and stuff that they had that had a massive impact on his character as well. So he meets Crow next. And then after all of that, that's whenever you have the moment between Class 7 and Rean, bro. And this part right here, like I was saying earlier, this game peaked a lot. But this one gave me, I think, my new favorite soundtrack in the entire series, man. And that is, I think it's called Although the Warmth is Small. When you're fighting Rean as the new Class 7. And then eventually after you beat him and he turns back into himself, Alcina runs out of him. It's one of the most emotional moments ever, man. But then what follows is when they truly free him, and you see this, everyone from the old Class 7, the new Class 7, his sister, all the connections he's ever made, reach out to him, and they snap him out of it. And in order to get his name back, his identity back, who he truly is back, he has to state the name himself. And he says, yo, I'm Rean Schwarzer, holding the crystal in his hand. And in that very same light, he goes out and he speaks to Milliam and Volumar. And finally gets to say his apologies to them too, bro. His regrets are now gone. And this scene to me, I mean, when I tell y'all, I think the reason why this scene means so much to me is because I've seen what happens to characters when they don't have a moment like this. I've seen what happens to my all-time favorites when they're too late. I've seen the big boss route. I've seen the shoyo route, right? I've seen what happens to characters when people aren't there for them fast enough, right? Like when they don't get to them when they need it. In Rean's case, bro, he could have gone down the route, especially after finding out the truth later on in the game, with the truth of Osborn and who he truly is, Dreikel's, and like the truth of how all of that stuff was set up, the truth behind the rivalries, the truth of the entire world, just all of that. He could have easily taken another approach to it, man, because I've seen it so many times. But the fact that the bonds that he made along the way, and in that very same theme that's been presented in the entire story thus far, that you can overcome any barrier as long as you got the people that you love with you, willing to overcome that together with you, and how that came into full, I've been talking about full fruition in this game, not only in terms of them overcoming the massive barrier that was going to end up being stopping the war between Calvert and the Empire, and stopping Osborn and his plans, but the war right here within Rean's own consciousness. And the fact that he was able to win that war thanks to those individuals that he's met along the way, and how much of an impact that they've had on him in the same way that he's had on them, that stuff to me is the most beautiful stuff that you can ever write, man. That feeling of self-freedom, that feeling of freedom that you feel once you feel that it is okay to be yourself, man. I mean, 110% of where you can reclaim your name. There's nothing else like that. And that's why that scene, the moment that I finished the fragment section, I was like, Rean is officially in my quadruple S tier of favorite characters of all time. You know, he's officially up there with my absolute favorites. And I'm going to wait until I finish Hajimari, because I'm pretty sure, I think Rean is going to be in this game, because I was told that if I love Rean now, wait until I play Hajimari. And that kind of scares me, because right now, Rean is like one of my all-time favorites. Like, it's hard to go higher than that. So, like, I don't know, man. We'll see. And we'll see where that takes us. But stuff like the very end of the game, with the greatest ending credits scene ever, going back to what I was saying about Final Fantasy VI, and that previously held the title for me of the greatest ending credits scene. But with the ending credits and then the stuff that followed, or I should say the stuff that was before that, and the true ending, where Rean came face to face with Osborn and their conversation, and then he comes face to face with the homunculus thing from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. that still catches me off guard every time I see that thing. But in how he wrecked it and took it upon himself and made that decision upon with his own, I mean, but not only his own being, but also with those around him, man. And it's so beautiful to me, bro. Because Rean, with everything that he's been gifted with so many things, bro. I mean, with incredible skill, he's been gifted with this power that not everybody else has. He's been gifted with the looks and the charisma and so many things. But with every gift that he has, and he's an awakener, all that stuff, but with every gift that he has, there are like 10 times the obstacles that he has to overcome because he has those gifts. And I just feel like this entire journey and the way that it culminates here with him having to overcome the biggest barrier of them all, which is himself, and then his pops, it is to me like the pinnacle of a story like this. And it is without question one of my all-time favorite character arcs from beginning to end, and following one man's journey throughout all of this type of stuff. And it's going to be one that I'm going to be thinking about for a very, very long time. And it's going to be one that is going to be very inspirational for me for a very long time. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about the character, bro. Like what a goat, man. Rean flipping Schwarzer, man. Like I said, with the rawness and swag alone, dude was going to end up being there regardless. But with the way that his character arc was presented, and then with the way that it was handled and executed. And then whenever you see his interactions with the other characters that I love just as much as him, man, like whenever I see his interactions with Lloyd, and I see those two ghosts together, and then I see him with Estelle, and then I see him with all the other wonderful characters in the story, and I'm like, yeah, man, this is my dude. Like if I ever caught, y'all know that meme with it was the Obama Comedy Central skit, where like he goes up to all these different individuals. Some of them he'll be like a firm handshake, others he'll be like, hey, yo, my dog, whatever. And in the last one, the two last ones, he was like, I got you. Like in the back, and in the last one, they're like, so they basically show, and a lot of people meme that, and like would put like their favorite things would be the ones where he goes up to him and daps him up, like, yo, what's good? And then the ones that they don't like would be the ones that he's like, oh, okay, firm handshake or whatever, right? If this was Trails, listen, dog, I would have been on the two last ones. Would have gone to the new Class 7 in Rean, bro. New Class 7, I would have done the hug. Come here, new Class 7. I love y'all, dog. And then for the last one, I would have looked at Rean and be like, let's go. That's my boy, dog. Like, seriously, man. If I was an NPC in the Trails universe, I would only have like 3 lines of dialogue and like 70 different handshakes for everybody that would come up. Like, yo, Rean, what's good? Homie, what's good, poppin'? Lloyd, like, oh, my boy, what's good? Kevin, you know what I'm saying? Estelle, Olivier. Oh. Okay, we're gonna talk about the story. So yeah, Rean, amazing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, I guess, as it goes on. But it's time to talk about this incredible story, bro. It's time to talk about this greatness. Listen, bro, where's my Santa hat? No game, I think, has ever started off with my hype levels rising to the point to where this one started off with like the hype levels rising. I've played a lot of games that have very strong introductions, man, and games that possibly even have better introductions, for sure. Like, there's a lot of emotional introductions out there. But in terms of straight hype, I'm talking about blood is pumping. It's like 12 o'clock at night, and you're losing your sanity in your own room. You're throwing Santa hats, your shirt's off, you're running all the way up because you're gorillaing out, man. You're hitting the chest. No prologue is on the same level as this. And this is the greatest prologue in terms of straight up hype that I've ever played, man. Listen, and the craziest thing about this is that right before, I think it was like 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whenever it was I finished Cold Steel 3, one of my friends, Kiseki, sent me a manga chapter that was like the prelude to Cold Steel 4. And within this prelude, you saw something similar that was happening here with like with Lloyd and Estelle and Joshua and Ren and like they were out here doing their thing. And like whenever I read the manga, I was losing my mind. But it like went to the back of my mind, because after that I experienced every drama CD, which, by the way, if you haven't experienced all the drama and audio CDs, go out and experience them for all 3 games, or for all 3 sagas, for like the Sky Saga, for the Crossbill games, and for the Cold Steel games. Like, seriously, man, I experienced all those, and just getting hyped for Cold Steel 4, I didn't watch any trailers. So that thing went to the back of my mind. So when I started Cold Steel 4, I heard the music, and then the whole stuff that was happening before the game came out, where I wasn't even able to play it, because I bought the Digital Deluxe Edition first, and then for some reason, stuff was going down to where it wouldn't let you even play it, so I went out and bought the physical, man. I own a copy of both the physical and digital edition of this game. Alright, that's how bad they wanted to play it. So, like, I went out and bought the physical, came back, put it in, and it took a couple hours to install, started playing it. And so with all that fiasco and everything, and weeks passed, I had completely forgotten what I had read. So whenever I went in there and I was listening to the way the world was reacting, I saw Alster, and because I had just experienced the Cold Steel 2 drama CD, I was like, yo, Alster, and I was reminded of the manga chapter with Estelle and Joshua helping out Tobal, and Talia and Kai and all that stuff, and I was like, yo, greatness, like, where's Ein at? And we got to see Ein later on in the credits, but I was like, yo, where's Ein at? But anyways, we got to see the beginning of the game. You know, everybody's reacting to what is currently going on in the world, and the curse going on and whatnot. And then in the midst of all of this, you go to the Orcus Tower. And in the Orcus Tower, you hear Lloyd and Estelle talking about the thing. When I saw what I'm talking about, bro, when I saw that, dog, it was over. It was over. And then, what really made it over is when you got to play as them. When I saw that they were playable. When I saw that Estelle and Lloyd were playable, I was like, peak fiction. I don't need to play anything else in this game. This game is already a 10 out of 10. This game is already a 10 out of 10, man. I played every single battle that I could possibly play in that section. Because I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to play as any of these characters later on in the game. Because like I said, I didn't know. I didn't watch any of the trailers. I didn't know that they were gonna be a massive part of the game. I just thought they were gonna be a part of the prologue. I was like, yo, because that's what happened in Azure. In Azure, you played as Lloyd. What was it? I think it was Lloyd, Noel, Adios, and Dudley, right? And you didn't get to really play as some of them later on. So I was like, yo, we're about to come into a situation where I'm not going to be able to play as any of these characters later on in the game. So I took full advantage. I did every S-craft. Wheel of Time looked so good. I was like, I was reminded of how much I loved these characters. And I was really shown how much love I had for Rean. Where I was like, yo, Rean, dude, and as stuff progressed with her and just seeing the way that she carries herself now after all these games. Because her plotline is one of my favorite parts of this entire game. Or this entire series. Like going back to her backstory in the third, which I don't even like talking about because of how emotional that was. Man, that is one of the most just saddening. It's just, that is one of the most saddest, most tragic backstories I've ever seen for any character in anything. And like going from the end of the third to the cross-spell games and seeing that she has that in real time as well, she's also putting up with so much pain when it comes to her actual family and all that stuff, and to see some of those things resolve in this game and seeing how happy she is now with Estelle and Joshua and her interactions with Tita, with Kia, how she was helping out the squad, and like I just Rean is so goat, bro. And it was so great to see the name Bright with it too. And there was this awesome little moment where Rean later on in the game was talking to her pops, and she introduces herself as Rean Bright, man, and talks about her family, and then she starts talking about Estelle and Josh in very comedic ways, and I loved it, man. Any scene with Rean was always awesome, and having her in my party was always great, because I felt like Rean was one of the most overpowered characters. I believe it was Calamity Throw, that whenever you would use it, Nightmare or like instant KO would hit, so you would just start going ham. And it was so great to see Phantom Raid. My most used S-craft, I think, I would dare say up until, I don't even know. I mean, I think when it comes to one single game, I think that's still the one that I might have used the most. I don't know, because I used Dreams a lot in this one and in Cold Steel 3 until I got Breaking Dawn, which is the coolest S-craft ever. The Divine Blade, son. Like, yo. And like, that's the thing about Rean, bro. Like, son, my boy also is going on this journey to become great at something, man. Like, and I'm messed, but it's the way that he's going about it too, and to see him become a Divine Blade. But anyways, we're not there yet. Still in the prologue. Phantom Raid is a technique that I've used so much. I love that S-craft. Like that and Wheel of Time, dude. Oh, and then to see like their old S-crafts as regular crafts in here in the same way that they did it in the Crossbell games, but actually them in 3D. I was like, yo, this is nasty. Like I S-crafted with Joshua as much as possible. Same thing with Estelle. And then being able to see Lloyd's Rising Sun and this gorgeous quality, because Rising Sun for a long time was my favorite S-craft, I'm not gonna lie. I spammed that so much in Azure because it's just such a nasty move. Rising Sun with the dragon coming out of the, it's goated. So like, and I remember in Cold Steel 2, I was using the Flagnards out of that whenever it was him and Risha. I was like, yo, this is nasty, this is goated, right? So but when this game first starts off and then you get to use it, I'm gonna let you know right now, end game, I used Rising Sun. I wish that this game had a counter, because Lloyd had something equipped to where his CP would come back so quick. Rean and Altina were almost always in my party because Altina was my main healer. she had this one move, I think it's Artium Heal, where Artium Heal would not only heal your party, but it would also heal their, or like, bring back their CP. So I had that on at all times. And then Rean had, what was it, Scold? Rigid? It was one of those, materia. Flipping Flagnards, the Master Quartz, that would allow you to regain CP if you take out enemies, the more damage you do, whatever the case may be. So, like, he was always maxed out CP, or almost always, at least at 100, almost at all times. So, like, I always had those two, but Lloyd had something similar to Rean, to where his CP would just come back non-stop. So I was like, okay, and that's the way it is. Burning Heart, you know, the legendary, yeah, I can't even tell you the amount of times I use that. And then Rising Sun. Burning Heart, Rising Sun. Burning Heart, Rising Sun. And I can't even, bro, I was obliterating enemies in the endgame with Rising Sun, man. I mean, because it's just such a nasty S-craft. But regardless, that beginning prologue session was so hype. I was jumping around for a good 2 hours, exploring the entire area, just using all of their techniques, and it was so gold, bro. I just could not believe what was happening before my eyes. And then whenever you get to the end of the section, and you see Maria Bell and Alberike, and you're like, what in the flag darts? And I'm a Maria Bell stan, man. Listen, dude. Maria Bell, for me, is one of my favorite antagonists, solely because of the fact that I can't predict her. You know, there's just certain characters that you really love because you can't predict them. Maria Bell's like that for me. It's the same thing I have with Vita. Except where Vita is like less, because you see that now her intentions more so lean, and especially after seeing that everything that she did in Cold Steel 2 was because she was trying to make her own rivalries. You know, that's what she tried to do with Crow and Rean in order to stop what was eventually going to happen with this wretched fairy tale that actually took place. Which is genius, by the way. I mean, shout out to Vita. Vita GOAT, right? But with Maria Bell in particular, she's, ever since the very first Zero game, there's just been something about her, like her personality. I remember whenever you meet her in the auction, and even before you get this massive twist, it's just something about her personality. She's so carefree, or at least that's what she lets on. And I always love characters like that. Something with like Olivier, right, where like you can immediately, at least for me, I love them because I'm like, yo, I can't predict them. Like they're just so much fun. And campy and those types of characters, but in Maria Bell's place, especially during this game, and stuff that she was stating later on, and then in the final scene of the game, yo, the end credit scene of this game, bro. I'm gonna wait to talk about that, man. I'm gonna wait to talk about that. But like, dude, Maria Bell, for ever since you find out exactly what it is that, or like why it is that she's doing what she's doing, and then, you know, joining Ouroboros between the third Anguis, and just the way that she speaks and carries herself, I love that character, and I want to find out more about her character, because it's like she just has, she's one of those members of Ouroboros that, I mean, it feels like all of them have this at this point, but definitely she has like that like, yo, like, what are you truly doing here vibe to her, right? Especially because we spent an entire game trying to get to her and whatnot, but it's like she just fascinates me. Maria Bell fascinates me in the same way, and I find it fitting that she's always with Campy now, because both of them fascinate me so much. Listen, bro, now that we're talking about Ouroboros, I have a section, my last two things right here literally say the McBurn and Ouroboros eye-opening lines. And then the final thing that I have written on here is the Grand Master in all caps. All right, that's like, because that, Rean aside, that is what I've been thinking about the most. That is without question, it's not even close, what I've been thinking about most. But regardless, the game itself, man, I mean, after the prologue, like I said before, I already touched upon it with the old Class 7, and you start off in the village, and it was so great seeing the village, man, and getting the theme, and just seeing, like, oh god, man, the music in this game was out of this world. What does it call it? Ashita Eno Kiseki? That song is masterful. When that played in the Rean boss fight in Fragments, dog. Then the open world exploring theme, the forest themes, I mean, and then the emotional themes, Majestic Roar, the Osborne fight theme, that theme is, like, gory. This game's music for me, I think, without question, is my favorite in the Cold Steel. Maybe even out of all the games. Well, no, that's hard. Because, yo, man, Crossbell's OSTs are, like, 50 out of 10s, dude. Excuse me. It's great stuff. But, yeah, man, like, going on from there, and then the entirety of Act 1, just going out and attempting to get Rean back and, you know, getting more acquainted with the new Class 7. And Juna, for me, in this game, really showed just how awesome she is, man, as a character. Like, the stuff that she would state to individuals like Campy and the rest of the Ouroboros members, and you're like, yo, Juna, I know that Rean has rubbed off on you, but this is coming from you and yourself, and your admiration for Lloyd. Hey, she has good taste, man. Admiration for Lloyd and Rean, you know what I'm saying? Like, and then she acts like early Estelle. I mean, technically it's still like Estelle. That's another thing, man, you know. Anytime that Estelle would speak on screen, because she has by far my favorite way of speaking in the series, to where every time that she's going to say something, I'm always interested in seeing how she's going to rebuttal to whatever it is that she just said, because she's so sassy and always on the mark of, like, striking back at whoever it is, whatever, you know, with a big stick, whatever the case may be. So yeah, Estelle goat, man. But yeah, just going throughout that entire first part of the game, and learning bits and pieces about what's been happening to the world. And this is where that Final Fantasy VI influence really started kicking in, at least for me, and why I really enjoyed this open world section, the open world sections of the game, beginning with the Act 1 sections. Because it was like you're going throughout every single area that you've already gone through, but things have changed so much. And more so than in Cold Steel 2, because in Cold Steel 2 you had a very similar situation. But in this case, it's like you're literally seeing the damage that the end of the world is having on people. You're literally seeing the damage. People are scared for their lives. They're about to be sent to war, and like going around every single place and clicking X and seeing the lines of dialogue that would come from certain individuals, and then the side quests of like the new Class 7 meeting so many members of the old Thor's Academy and whatnot. Like, it was so awesome seeing a lot of those characters come back again and whatnot, and then continuing to see more characters from Liberal and Crossbell. That was a lot of greatness there as well. But overall, the main highlight was seeing how much the new Class 7 has grown and just how much Rean meant to them, and then seeing a character like Ash, for example, who I had no idea what fate was gonna have in store for him at the end of Cold Steel 3. To see, like, there was a one scene with Kurt and him that was so good, man. It reminded me of the scene with Lloyd and Randy from Azure, and it was fantastic, bro. Just so much of that stuff, and like Flagnards, and it eventually getting all of the characters back together. I really like the dungeon system that they had in the village, where you were able to explore that one spooky place. What was it? The Saint Graal Labyrinth, I think it was called. That was a lot of fun. And then, you know, going to the fragments, man. That is, like, from both an emotional and just the hype. It had everything. It had absolutely everything. It had the insanity of attempting to get to Rean, and you're switching between all three parties. You're playing as Rean with Celine, and, you know, Celine is able to cure all ailments, and fantastic at like doing the what is it called? Whenever, like, you do the assist, so like you hit, you strike, character pops up, you get the assist, and eventually you'll have enough to do the burst or the rush, whatever. And so, like, you had a lot of that going on. It was just fun playing as Reed in that other state, even though it was hurting me on the inside, because I was like, man, I don't want my boy to go through this. But it's always fun to play as that version of Reed. And you know what's crazy? Staying on the topic, during Cold Steel 2, and even more so in Cold Steel 3. Actually, no, in Cold Steel 2, I didn't really have this thought as much, but in Cold Steel 3, I definitely did. Where I wouldn't use the ogre power because I didn't want to worry the students. I legitimately had that thought. In Cold Steel 4, I barely used the ogre power. I only use the ogre power in boss battles. That is how you know the story is having an impact on you. When you don't use something because you don't want to worry these fictional characters that don't actually exist. Alright, that's how you know you're immersed in the moment. But hey, those thoughts happen. Those thoughts happen. But that fragment session was just so incredible, man. And the 50 Mira scene with Crow and Rean, I was like, yes! Like, yo, this is what I'm talking about, because for so long. Because listen, man, I love Crow so much, bro. That relationship between Crow and Rean, and for me especially, that in Cold Steel 1, not knowing what was gonna happen, I loved Crow so much and his personality that I did almost every bonding event I could possibly do with him. I think the bonding events that I did the most, at least in the first game, were like Crow and Alyssa, Laura, Sarah, Emma, like those types, Elliot, like guys, I think too. Like I did it with a lot of them, but I think those are the ones that I did the most. And so Crow, though, I did almost every single time he popped up. I was like, yo, that's Rean's boy. Like I gotta go talk to him. So, and I really appreciate him. So when that stuff was really hitting at the end of Cold Steel 1 and then Cold Steel 2, the entire journey, that was hitting for real, and it was hitting because I spent all that time with him in bonding events. So imagine that multiplied by 40, where he had gone through this entire journey to get him back. He dies. Cold Steel 3, he shows up as Azure Siegfried. You're like, who in the world is that Siegfried guy? You know that blue destination moment from Cold Steel 3? We have to fight him again. Rena's like, nah, man, I'm finna go at you hands. Like, we ain't gotta get in the Knights. We're throwing straight hands. And it's just gonna be me and you. I was like, yeah. But then you get Cold Steel 4. And who better to help this man snap him back to his senses than a team up of Doobs. She was so good at this game. Doobly and Crow. And it's like flagnards, bro. And it was so good. And then George showing up, the Georg. And then later, once again, becoming George. And Angie. And that entire situation. And how they were able to join our cause eventually as well. But like, man, dude. Just Crow and the 50 Mira is like, yo, I'm gonna pay back the interest. I was like, yeah. Like, it was so good. I love that all so much. That was peak. That was super peak. And I have so many screenshots on that part because I didn't think I was gonna be able to play with Crow and Doobly again. So I have so many screenshots on my PS4 of like them doing the rush, like with like Reed and Crow, Celine and Doobly. I was like, heck yeah, man, this is GOAT. And switching between all the parties, doing your thing, and then of course you have the probably the best boss battle for me, from an emotional standpoint, which is the new Class 7 versus Rean, and then the moment I was talking about earlier, just peak fiction there, man, and then eventually stuff really starts popping off in the workshop. Everybody starts showing up. You have a boss fight between, listen, bro, you and your new Class 7 taking on Dreichels, Osborne, and Arianrod, Leanne, and it hits just as hard, or I should say harder. It hits harder thinking about the what happens later on and seeing the truth. Oh, and by the way, in Act 1, there were these little sequences where you would go to these shrines and you would get like these visions of stuff that, like, for example, we got one of Dreichels with Leanne and the homunculus talking to Dreichels, and you're like, what in the flagnards? And then you got another one with Rutger and whatnot, whenever they ended up reviving him with Zephyr. And you got bits and pieces like that with some of the characters. You even got one with Rean, with Rean and Osborne. Like, flag, that one was hitting hard. And then that eventual revelation later on was out of this world. Of what all of that actually was and whatnot, but it was like, man, dude. And then something else I forgot to mention in Act 1. Anytime, like especially in the crossbell section, when like Estelle and I think it was Estelle and Ellie showed up. Yo, dude, I forgot to talk about Ellie earlier on, dog. Ellie and Marty Bell's interactions are always A1, man. But in that section, whenever they come in and they're in Crossbow and they get saved by Ellie and Estelle, I was losing my absolute mind. And then at the end of that section, when Lloyd, Joshua, I mean, they all just show up ready to go up in like somewhere, I was like, yo, this is peak. So like, yeah, man, but yeah, in the fragment section, whenever you're going into like Swimwear and then you're fighting Arianrod and Osborne, and that boss fight was absolutely insane. I was sweating so hard. That might have been the hardest boss fight in the game, honestly. Like real talk. I think that might have been the hardest boss fight. That junk was crazy. and then, you know, eventually escaping, and then you're finally back, and you're able to do the old Cold Steel things. And being able to do the old Cold Steel things never felt better than it did at the beginning of Act 2, where, you know, you have this open world available to you, you have this a day to yourself, where you're able to go out and do the bonding events. Those bonding events, this game had the best bonding events and side quests in the entire series. Up until this point, for me, I think my favorite bonding events and side quests both belong to Azure. I think Azure, from a side quest standpoint, was just untouched. Azure's side quests were phenomenal. They were phenomenal, man. And in Cold Steel 4, a lot of those same incredible, like the best side quests from every single game were brought back in some way, shape, or form. Some of the best mini games, like the Pom Pom Party and the Vantage Master. I spent so much time playing Vantage Masters and Pom Pom Party. And just all of the best stuff from like the earlier games. I wish they would have brought back some of the stuff from the third on those mini games. Those were a lot of fun. But we didn't get any of that. We just got so many great bonding events, and then they got even better at the beginning of Act 2 after the first rivalry, whenever you fight Crow, man. And I was already crying, bro. I was like, yo, I don't want Crow to die, man. Things were popping off. So when Crow's about to die and Rean ends up saving him and he brings him back on board, I was like, bro, Crow back in my party, this is all I've ever wanted. This is all I've ever wanted. That man, Crow never left my starting lineup. I'm talking about, if he did, maybe it was because certain other characters were required. And that's so about once or twice, but throughout the entirety of the rest of the game, Crow never left my party. Never. I'm talking about never. So a lot of the time, whenever I had like that 6 to 8 man squad, it's Crow and Altina never left Rean's side. Daughter Altina and Goat Crow never left Rean's side throughout this entire game, unless, you know, somebody else was in position, wherever the case may be. But the open world sections in this game, any of the open world sections, I enjoyed them so much. Being able to see, you know, like I was saying before, and as it progressed, you were able to go out and experience even more of the sections. Like whenever you guys experience Crossbill in its fullest form, and go throughout the entire city and go to the St. Ursula Hospital. I love that theme so much. Visit the Emperor and have those scenes with him, and Ash, for example, and whatnot, and the Crow bonding events, and seeing him interact with a new Class 7, because those scenes are just so precious, man. And then of course the other wonderful bonding events that you would have, where like a lot of them were really, really emotional, like the ones with Sarah and Rean. There was this one really incredible one with Rean, and I think it was it Alfine, whenever they went to Ulster. And at this point in time, none of the stuff later on in the game had happened yet, because up until this point you had seen little bits and pieces of Scheherazade, right? And you've seen how Olivier's death has impacted everyone, especially in Ulster. So then you go down there and then you see Alfine playing the lute, and I was like, no, don't do this to me, bro. Like, that stuff was hitting so hard. And there's so many other great bonding events just like that I just can't remember from the top of my mind right now. But just being able to explore all that with any party that you wanted, you just always had to have like a specific one for certain times, and the entire concept of the rivalries being like a little tournament, but except the other individuals, if they were immortals, then they would have to die unless Rean would be able to save them. And like having the situation with Rugger and Fee and those final moments, and that awesome little section right there, man. That stuff was hitting extremely hard. Just great stuff, man. In Act 2, and like I was on the high of that entire act of just having Rean and Crow on the same team again, bro. Like, just the entire act, I could not get over it, bro. I was like, yo, I used every combination possible with those two in the same party. It was just old Class 7, new Class 7. They were all coming together. I'm not gonna lie though, at the very beginning, new Class 7 almost never left my party, because I was like, man, you gotta do it, bro. You gotta have Teach with his children, with his students, and Crow, right? And then as time went on, I was like, okay, old Class 7, I miss y'all, I love y'all too, I'll bring them on. And I used Gaius so much in this game too, bro. That's my boy, the Dominion. And the conversation with Gaius at any single given point in time of like with bringing up Kevin, and I was like, yo, I gotta see what like Kevin with Wazy and stuff. I was like, yo, Ein. I was like, yo, man, the fact that he even gets to fly around in his Merkaba, so good, so good. But yo, it's time to talk about Act 2, or the end of Act 2. Act 2 ends with so much clout in one area. Cassius Bright. And then an incredible scene with Lloyd and Rean that just had me bawling, bro. Where Rean is like, yo, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry for what I did to you back in Crossbow. I don't deserve any of this that everybody's saying to me. And for Lloyd to say, like, yo, I got your back, my man. You gotta worry about it. The special support section, as long as we're here, we're gonna support y'all with all we have. Not only did it like solidify Lloyd's placement as one of my favorite characters, but also Rean's as well. And just seeing all the interactions, you know, with Estelle and seeing all the comedic moments were so good during that section. Like so many great moments during that portion whenever you have everybody together again. But when they start getting invaded by Ouroboros and stuff starts popping off and the party splits between female and male and you have such a stacked roster. The male roster was filled with a dream team. I think the starting lineup was something around the lines of, I think it was Rean, Joshua, Crow, and was it Ash? I think was the starting four. And you're just like Jemima. And on the female side as well was popping off, and I kept switching between the two. I was like, oh, this is way too much fun. This is amazing. Yeah, so many moments like that. And I was just losing my mind. And then right before that stuff pops off, you get to find out more about the Meal Mirage plan, and that this is going to require the sacrifices a bunch of lives and whatnot. And in the midst of all of that, Rean, Lloyd, and Estelle both come to the same, or all three of them come to the same conclusion. We're like, yo, we're not following this. We're gonna go about it our own way. And just the way that they all declared that, but with their own personality and quirks attached to it, was so incredible. I loved that scene so much. But right after all of this, for me, is without a doubt the most hyped I have ever been while playing this franchise. Period. It's not even close. And this is coming from someone who, at the end of Azure, when during the prison break, was legitimately running around my house. That during the end of Cold Steel 2, I was legitimately running around my house. That during the beginning of Cold Steel 4, I was losing my mind, going during the SC. I'm a person who gets hyped, especially during this series. There's a lot of amazing hype moments, all right? But the granddaddy of them all, the Santa hat of them all, the most hyped moment in this series, without question, is when I heard Koyasu's voice again. Because I play this game in Japanese for this very reason. When I saw Olivier Lenheim with the eye patch, because I thought he was dead. I was starting to get to the point, because I was questioning it. I was like, man, I don't know if he's dead. I don't know. But as the game progressed, because they continued to show how everybody felt, I was like, yo, he might actually be dead. So when he showed up in the nick of time, because I was like, yo, they're not, if anything, Cassius will go up and like somewhere or whatever, right? They'll show up and pop off, which that would have been hype on its own. But to show that the reason why Vivi hadn't been here up until this point in time, the reason why Patrick hadn't been here up until this point in time, the reason why all those characters from the old class, some of them from the new class, whatever, all those characters that you saw like in the shadows, moving in their own ways and everything, you're like, yo, what are these characters up to? And the fact that like Mueller went missing and all these things came into fruition right there at the very end, or in that very section, with Olivier showing up on the Courageous 2, and it's like, oh, that was so good. And it's like, when there was Sherazard, and it's like, because I thought they were dead, that part, I mean, no, I was flying. I'm still speechless. Like, I was just seeing Olivier again. There could be no greater happiness, because that man has been the spirit of Trails from game one, and the fact that I had been with it from FC, and seeing this man's entire journey up until this point in time. When I saw that moment, I immediately thought back to the third and that incredible door, where it was him and Osborn on top of the ships, and it basically telling each other that whatever you do, I'm gonna do it better. And it was so incredible with the rose and the shot. And so when Osborn faked his death in Cold Steel 2, now you had a situation where Olivier also had to do a little faking of his own. Of course, it wasn't due to his own thing like it was with Osborn, but it was thanks to George and whatnot that he was able to get out of there safely and also one up the other side. And it was so goated, and I love the parallels to that, man. With Olivier and Osborn, and just continuing to show that they are always willing to one up each other, and it was so magnificent. And I like when I tell you during that section, I mean, it was just the culmination of all of that. Being able to play as Estelle again, being able to play as Rean, Joshua, and Lloyd on the same team. On the same team! On the same team, son! Rean, Lloyd! Rean and Lloyd on the same team, bro. Like, there's nothing, they, like, Rean, Lloyd, and Joshua on the same team, son. With Crow. And it's like, bro, like, son, like, I still have so many screenshots remaining from that portion of this, like, constant of the 5 bursts where they would all come up. Like, so I was already going off that high, and then when Olivia shows up, it's just like, it was insanity. And that's whenever you truly get into the section of the game where things really start getting interesting in the quests and bonding events standpoint, because now you basically have your full party that you're going to be utilizing throughout the rest of the game. And so when Act 3 starts kicking off, and you get and like the Act 3 and before the finale, and you have the best side quests, bro. I mean, the best side quests. In the finale, there's even 2 side quests in particular. One where you go to Hamel in front of flipping Lewis' grave, bro, and just hearing Ash's actual name, Johan, and having those moments with Ash and his parents, Joshua and his parents, and just, God, that was phenomenal, man. And like, I had so much more appreciation for the third after this, because it was a moment where it was very similar to what was happening in Phantasmagoria at the time, right? Where it's just like, man. And then in the flip side, you have those moments on Crossbell where like stuff is popping off, and you're playing a special sports section down there, and it's like, yo, it's just bad goated. So it's like special support section, and Rean and June are going up in like swimwear, and the dialogue together and seeing what they would say, and it's like, yo, this feels just like old times. It's so good. Those 2, without question, are my favorite side quests in the game. And the bonding events just continue to get more emotional and better as time went on. And then the biggest thing for me from Act 3, from what I can remember, were 2 things. Number 1 was the mass, and I think this was in Act 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, this could have been at the end of Act 2, but I believe it was in the end of Act 3. It's just all of this is so jumbled together that I do not even remember this point in time. But at the beginning of Act 3, I believe we started getting the revelations of what really happened in Dreigel's past in Osborn. And when we saw what happened with Rutger, we saw what happened with Osborn, and we started getting more answers and whatnot. But the one that specifically really stuck out to me was the Osborn one, man. Like seeing and Leanne, and seeing that Leanne went through so much through all these years, protecting someone that she loved, watching over someone that she loved, and continuing to watch over Osborn, seeing that he started up this new family, seeing how much Osborn truly loved Rean and Cassia, and then because of everything that had been going on, and his house had been burnt down, and then you see that it was all because of the will of that stupid homunculus, man. It was all because of Obelisk the Tormentor, who wanted to come back and resurrect himself, and it's like, wow, bro. I mean, what a punished character. It's like, if only things had gone differently, bro. And that's why those lines at the end of the game where Osborn was talking to Rean and being like, if only the circumstances were different, I could have trained you. We could have been together, man. Like, you truly are my son. Those lines were hitting hard, bro. Because of this revelation, this moment right here in the mirror after you have that moment with Rose, which that was a big plot twist in itself. I think that she was a holy beast, just like Zeit and Ragnar and whatnot, right? And you're like, Flagnar's like, yo, this game just continues to one up itself. But that revelation with Osborn and what he's truly been going through and why it is that he was able to be shot through the heart and still live, and just answered so many different things, and why it is that these characters are immortals per se, to take part of these rivalries, all to resurrect the Great One, and just all these different things with Osborn and his particular character arc and his story. It really elevated Osborn and Leanne, both characters, into being even more incredible than I originally anticipated them being. Osborn is without question one of my favorite characters in the story. He's definitely top 10. I'd have to think about like where everybody's going to be in the top 10, because after this game I feel like everybody was elevated, but Osborn without question is arguably my favorite antagonist in the series at this point. It's between, I think I have him over Leo at this point. Like I love Leonhard the Blade Lord, but Chancellor Osborn, bro, love that dude, bro. And I don't know if McBurn can't even be counted up there anymore, but God, I love me some McBurn. But we'll talk about that man here in a second, because that's my dude. That man right there is a GOAT for real. But yeah, man, just that entire section, and then after that, whenever you go into Crossbell and you had that incredible performance of what was happening with Sully, which was so cool, seeing Sully take the reins from Risha and Ilya as they're, of course, out there doing their thing. It was so cool hearing about what was happening in the world. It's kind of got some One Piece stuff where you would hear like of these little altercations of like, oh snap, the Growls Ritter, led by Kevin and Rias, are taking on the other members of Ouroboros, Anguis's. They were taking on Anguis's. I was like, yo, let me see that. Some One Piece stuff, And like whenever they would talk about Risha and Adios going up in like swimwear and Calvert or something, I was like, yo, let me see this stuff, dude. And stuff like that just really continued to make the world feel so huge and incredible. And the amount of detail put into it and whatnot. And speaking of the amount of detail, Anton being a part of some of these side quests, yo, shout out to Anton, bro. And his moment with Sharon in the Michelin stuff, great. But yeah, man, we'll go in that Crossbow section whenever they have that performance all together, and then eventually they're able to, because of the performance and being distracted by the performance or the diversion by the performance, you're able to invade the geofront and then go up to the Orcus Tower in the same way that you did in Azure. I thought that was so cool. And at the beginning of the game, and you're able to go in there and you're able to fight Victor S.R. Seed, bro. Now, I didn't talk about this specifically in the other section because I wanted to save it for here. But listen, man, this dude, Victor S.R. Seed, is so goated that he was hit with the same thing as some of the other characters, where they would not retain their personalities, except he was able to retain his personality. You know what I'm saying? He was able to retain his power. He was able to retain all that. And it was time to go up and like somewhere. And so when you get Victor S.R. Seed back, and it's him and McBurn, son. Yo, that dude is so goated, bro. It was so awesome being able to use him later on in the game. And that incredible Yonko level team of him, Toval, Aurelia, and Vita. Like, dog. But anyways, so yeah, getting Victor back and seeing his interactions and moments with Rean and with Laura was fantastic. But the biggest highlight for me from this section was McBurn and seeing his Evangelion state. I was like, what in the flying flannels is that? Because they were talking about how, and then Kurt's family showed up too during this section. That was super hype, but everybody was like, yo, you're still holding back. There's something still left here. When I first saw whatever that thing was, I could have sworn that McBurn was going to have a Divine Knight. Because that's how that thing was. I was like, bro, is that an Evangelion? Is that a Divine Knight? Like, does McBurn have an 8th Divine Knight? So I was like, what we got going on here? So I was really, really fascinated by that. And of course, we didn't get the answer to that until later, and that opened up my eyes. That, to me, was the equivalent, for Attack on Titan fans, of the basement. Was what McBurn was saying throughout that entire section in his part during the finale. But we'll get to that here in a second, man. Because sweet mother of Flagners was that crazy. So yeah, all that stuff happens. The performance was so beautiful. The music, it was so good. And I really, and anytime you go back to Crossbell, it's always great. But that section in particular was awesome. You know, being able to talk to the characters, the conversations they were having, and the interactions, they were all just out of this world. Ren's moments with her family members. I mean, that section was just great. And then you get to the end of Act 3. With Aryan Rod, man, Leanne, dude, and the story. And up until this point, you know, I had Duvali in my squad a lot too. She was a character that I tried to keep in my squad as much as possible because I didn't know how long I would have her for. So I would continue to take her in and out of my squad, and I just really enjoyed having her around. And talking to her because of her personality, how hilarious she is, but also because of how awesome her fighting style is. You know, she's a member of the Star Rider for Flagnard's sake, like this character that took me, that was so hard to beat in Azure, and you know, being able to fight her once again in the Cold Steel games, and to actually have her be a part of your squad, especially after the way that she questioned your master's character that she loves so much in Aryan Rod, and seeing her journey and continuing to grow in her way in this game. And that entire Aryan Rod section was so magnificent, man. And Aryan Rod has already, you know, stapled herself as a character of legend in my eyes, especially after that incredible boss battle in Azure, and you know the way that everybody else speaks of her and whatnot in of itself is worthy of her being a character of legend. But that boss fight like solidified her as like a legend for me in gaming of like bosses that I've ever faced. So facing her in this game, I went into that section already thinking, or at least, you know, of what I thought was going to happen, thinking about what I thought was going to happen. And so I went into that section, and I was like, man, I'm going to have to fight Aeneas and then Aryan Rod, and I'm going to have to say goodbye to her because we saw what just happened with Rutger. And unless Rean is able to save her, it's going to be it for Aryan Rod. And I did not want to say goodbye to this awesome character that I always look forward to seeing, because she is such a character of legend, and this game did staple her as an incredible character in the way that she sacrificed so much of her own self in order to keep others that she loves so much happy, and whatnot. She's just selfless and a person that's respected by so many individuals, as we saw whenever she died and how many people went to go pay respects. But in that section in particular, man, you know, after you do that incredible battle and whatnot, and then this bastard Rufus comes in and he cashes in Money in the Bank and takes full advantage of the fact that she has left herself wide open. I thought Aryan Rod was going to join my party. I was like, yo, if Aryan Rod joins my party, I dare anyone to even come close to my squad. Because if Aryan Rod would have joined my party, that would have been the strongest party of all time. Of all time, especially at the end of the game. Like, I was just, dude, I was already thinking, like, during the section, I thought Aryan Rod was gonna live. I was like, yo, whenever they were about to save Aryan Rod, I was like, yes, I'm already thinking about the things. I was like, number one, I gotta see how it's gonna look whenever Rean and Aryan Rod do their stuff together, because technically, in some far-off universe, Leanne can be considered, like, Rean's either, like, first mama, or, like, some sort of parental figure or whatever. So I was like, yo, I gotta have Aryan Rod and Rean do something cool together and whatnot. So I was already having all these ideas, and then while Duvali was having her words with her and everything, I was like, yes, we're gonna have Aryan Rod. And then Rufus, flipping bastard, shows up, stabs her in the back, and I was like, come on, dude. And it was too good to be true, man. And like, I understand why they did it from a storytelling standpoint, because you want to hate these characters, or at least they want you to hate these characters, and then of course come to understand why it is they made the decisions that they made, and it fit with Rufus's character. I completely understand that, but because it was two things. Number one, I really wanted Aryan Rod to my party, and number two, I genuinely wanted Aryan Rod. I wanted Leanne to live a happy life, and I wanted her to now, after having received what she had received there from Duvali and from Rean, I wanted her to take that and live happily from here on out, man. And she was going to, and the fact that I was taken away from her just sucked so bad, bro. And it sucked the life out of me for the rest of that altercation. I was like, Flagnars, bro, like, what a bastard Rufus is. And I could not wait to pwn him whenever I got to that section in the finale. But here we get to the finale, man. And right here, I don't even know, bro, like, I played this all in 2 days. Right, the first day was my first playthrough, and the second time was my second playthrough, because the first time I missed one quest that didn't allow me to get the true ending. So during the finale, I'm sitting. Oh man, the voice section during the Rean sequence as well, with like Rose yelling toward Leanne, and like you idiot and all that stuff, and then Duvally and the way that, just the voice acting was out of this world in that section. I almost forgot about this scene. I'm so glad I didn't. During the entire Rean Rod section, I managed to hold it in. I really did. I managed to hold in my tears. But whenever the Ouroboros came in to pay their respects, you saw that a gift was left behind by Rean Rod. And this gift was Volimar's consciousness and Milliam being able to manifest herself. When I saw that, my tears just started falling, because Volimar and Rean's relationship is one of my favorite things in the entire game, and I'm gonna wait to talk about that for later on in the finale. But when I saw Milliam and her interactions with the rest of Class 7 too, because up until this point, it was only him that had an interaction with them in his consciousness. But no, like this time we got to have the entire class. I mean, that was such a beautiful moment, bro. I was like, dog, I was bawling like a baby, dude. I was like, yo, Volimar's back, and I'm gonna hit the heed my call Volimar. I'm gonna get the acknowledged. Like, yo, that's peak fiction, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, man, dude. I mean, but then we get to the finale, and like I was talking about earlier with the incredible side quests and the statements. I just remember that the Ren portion with her family actually took place in the finale, because you have to do that first and then bring her back to where they are in Hamel, so that you can go and do that side quest. So you had the two incredible side quests with the Liberal Squad and the Crossbow Squad. Without question, my favorite side quest in the game, and in the entire series, honestly. And then you have some other awesome quests, like in Ulster as well, where the Liberal Squad shows up, Olivier shows up. That was great. You get a conclusion to the Alan side quest storyline. You get a lot of conclusions to the side quest stories with Hugo and all of those side quest sections that had been continued throughout all of the games. You got to see conclusions to that in this game in a lot of different ways, and that was absolutely incredible, especially during that final day, and when you're able to go out and do all that, and then hunting all the cryptids and whatnot. And I missed on my first playthrough when Tobal gives you a phone call, and you have to go out and fight the dragon and the beast, and that's how you're able to open up that path, that different destiny. Now I have a little bit of a theory for this section, right? And it has something to do with what has been stated earlier on in the series, and something that was stated in this game as well. So I wonder if this ever gets touched upon ever again later on, like possibly in Hajimari, or maybe it'll be touched upon in the next saga. But did we ever get an answer as to why at the beginning of Cold Steel 1, we got a beginning that was different than the ending? Because we know why that was in Azure and in Zero, like where the beginning of Zero is different from the end of Zero. We know why. And up until this point, I was wondering, I was like, is the reason why we never got an answer to that just Kondo believing in us as the viewers and respecting our intelligence to know that the beginning of Cold Steel 1 was the first timeline and the ending of Cold Steel 1 is the second timeline, being that the first one, or within the first timeline, both Rean and Lloyd died, and in the second timeline, then both Rean and Lloyd lived and are able, and which is why all this stuff is going on right now? Is that what we're led to believe? Because we still don't have an answer to that, and that still leaves in my mind, then in the end of the game we have these two separate endings. And to me, this is a series that doesn't, like, if there's any series out there where I question every little detail, it's this one, because this series pays more attention to detail than any other series that I have ever seen. So the fact there's two endings, one of them where Rean dies and alongside with Crow and whatnot, and that's how they're able to save the world, but in the other one where they live, and that being the true path where they are able to defy fate, that is where it really becomes fascinating to me, because the true ending is where everyone comes together. and that has been the main theme of this entire series, of the entire Trail series. That's how they were able to defeat what's his face back in Zero, when with Estelle and Joshua and their bonds that they created with Ren and whatnot there at the end. Also, they were able to do that in Zero, and then in Cold Steel, because of the bonds that you created. I think some of the people weren't there. I think Milliam was the one that wasn't there in the beginning. That because of the bond that you made with Milliam, you were able to successfully go and infiltrate the fortress back at the end of Cold Steel 1. So then in Cold Steel 4, it all culminates with all sides coming in, and the reason why they were able to successfully do it the second time is because they were there that time, and they weren't there for the first ending. So it's like, it left me like... And so, all right, it's theory time, man. It's theory time. It's time to talk about the stuff that I have not been able to stop thinking about ever since the beginning of the game, ever since I finished the game, and then we'll go on and we'll speak about certain other things like the incredible final credits sequence and how much I love the emotional aspects of this game. But I want to talk about the thoughts aspect. I want to talk about the things that had the brain moving, because holy flagnards. So, all right. So the prologue starts off with the most unbelievable content. Or not the prologue, the beginning of the final act, where you go and you're infiltrating. You're going to all the salt pails, and infiltrating the salt pails is the liberal team, that was so goated. The super special support section, which was, yes, like I saved them for last in both playthroughs, because that's the special support section, man. That's the main squad. And then the Duvali squad with the Stahlritter. Then you had and Zephyr. Then you had the squad with Angie and George and them. And then the last one you had Team Yonko with like Aurelia, Vita, and Victor and Tobal, and that stuff was absolutely awesome. You got to fight these battles, and what really interested me about this part was that they specified, especially on the liberal side, that this was very similar to the Phantasmagoria stuff that took place in the third. Now, this is where stuff starts getting really, really crazy and wacky, and I want to go back and re-experience the final boss, or the final dungeon of the second game, because of how much lore is put there, and the entirety of the third, because at this point the third is extremely important. At this point, the third is might legitimately be the most important game from a world and storytelling standpoint. Because I need to go back and listen to the lines stated by Celeste in that game. I need to go back and listen to the lines stated by the church in that game. I need to go back and listen to the lines stated in the doors in that game, because sweet mother of flagnards, that game was referenced in the most supernatural moments in this game. And so, in that final section, you have all the boss battles, the rivalries finish, you got some craziness going down. The most noteworthy character interactions for me was the incredible moment between Kurt and Cedric, and finally getting him back to his senses. That was so beautiful, and getting him in his journey that started back in Cold Steel 2 up until now, and seeing the culmination of that journey, and then now he's able to feel free he's able to feel inner freedom in the same way that Olivia does, that he was so envious of, by joining Ouroboros, and how when the enforcers have so much freedom themselves. And it was so awesome seeing how that's how his and Shirley's journey culminated, because I was like, yo, that makes so much sense. The enforcers have so much freedom that's been emphasized so much, and now he's able to have that moment with them. And then, of course, the moments with Sharon, Alberich, and Elisa. And seeing those moments as well, Jusis and Rufus, the specific interactions, Lecter and Claire and whatnot, and then before we even get into the Osmer stuff, because that stuff was insane. But before we get into any of that, man, the two biggest things that I have not been able to stop thinking about are the lines stated by McBurn and by Marty Abel and Campanella. For this, man, I gotta go back to the source material, bro. I gotta go back to the source material. Because, dude, this stuff has left me just constantly thinking about it. Where is... Oh, this part was really cool. Where Alberich was talking about, do you remember the endless blade, the field of endless blades you witnessed during your trial with Thor's? And I was wondering what that was. And each sword marked a divine knight's defeat, and a grave of yet another one of its awakeners. And I was like, yo, wow. So that's what that was back at the end of the first game. You know, just stuff that really recontextualizes so many of these things. But let's go back to Marty Bell right here, right? So this stuff right here had my goosebumps running. Where they're talking about how, oh no, the Phantasmal base plan is still working. Like, don't you worry about that, baby. It's still going. We ain't gotta take anything back. Everything's been a part of the Grandmaster's game plan from the very get-go. So Muse says, like, in other words, your goal isn't to claim this to Septarians, but rather you intend to return the power divided among the Divine Knights back to one. And then they start continuing, they start talking. The Campanel's like, observe the path each of the 7 Septarians take when dropped into mankind's hands in the possible world. That is our goal, the driving force behind the Grandmaster's plan. And then Maria Bell says, arguably my favorite line in the game, from just a thought-provoking standpoint. I'm afraid those who are still bound by the shackles of this world wouldn't be able to comprehend our mission. When I read that line, my brain just like shattered, because then so many things started making sense. I was like, bro, wait, because right before that, Juna was the one that put all that together. And Marty Bell specifically was like, if you were able to, anybody that was able to put the stuff together with the DG cult, and everything that had taken place up until this point in time and all those findings, would have been able to come up with an answer. And then she states that anyone bound by the shackles of this world wouldn't be able to understand or comprehend their mission. And that's when my brain started rolling. I was like, this world, shackles of this world. That's when my mind said, parallel universes, different timelines, or we're talking about different worlds in terms of phantasmagoria. And I don't know where to go. I do not know where to go with this. Because with this series and with Kia, and the green hair thing is really starting to get to me, because every light green haired person in this series is spooky. You know, you have Campanella, you have Wazy, and you have Kia, where it's like, what is it that they know? And I'm really curious in Campanella, because Campanella was on the female side during the others, but that's not important. Campanella continues to be as spooky as ever, especially at the end of the game. But it's like, sweet mother of Flagnards, this world. And then I forgot, I don't remember what, I was talking to Laz about this, because I was like, I strongly recall in the third, them mentioning the stuff about them being shadows, which is why whenever we get to talk about the Grandmaster, I'm really, really curious. Now I'm like exceptionally curious. Exceptionally. Because there is one other character that looks just like the Grandmaster. I'm talking about just like, who also said the very same thing. Who also said the very same exact thing. The same thing. And that's why I cannot wait to go back and experience the Celeste stuff. But we'll talk about that in a second. Because it's like, they're talking about being shadows. And being in these worlds where they're still able to exist. In like Phantasmagoria and stuff like that. That is considered a different world than ours. So they talk about a world like that? Or are we talking about a different timeline? Or are we talking about what McBurn was talking about? Now McBurn, after that insane situation, you go and you face off with McBurn before you go off to Osborn. And I was wondering, I was like, why are they saving McBurn for last? Like, shouldn't they be saving Rufus? Because of the attachment to that storyline that we've been going through for all these games. But then I understood what McBurn. McBurn's purpose isn't just to be the king of rawness and swag. McBurn's purpose isn't just to be the strongest in Orbolos. McBurn's purpose is to tell us about what's truly happening in the world of Zemuria. And it goes even further than that. And I was like, bro, slow down. Slow down. Slow down. McBurn is like, oh, first, he's known as the Overlord of the Beyond. The Balimar calls him the Overlord of the Beyond. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? What in the world is the Beyond? Is that like the Dark Continent? Is that the gourmet world? The new world? Like, what in the world is the Beyond? The Overlord of the Beyond. And so you fight McBurn And after you fight McBurn, he's like, he regains his memories and he says something around the lines of, Ouroboros is a fitting name. Like something along those lines of, oh no, now that makes perfect sense. That's a perfect name for what they're trying to do. Campanella, that rat. And I was like, yo, what is going on? And then he starts talking about the fact that he's someone that hasn't come from this world. From a world even further beyond. And I was just like, hold on, Chief, wait. I was like, bro, are we about to figure out? Like, and then Rean starts talking about how, yeah, for him it ended at the sea. At the sea, and for a lot of people out there, that's where the world ends. But what goes beyond that? What goes beyond that sea? And immediately I started getting chills because I'm an individual that for many, many, many years explored certain things like Antarctica, and especially whenever I was younger, I was really into theories of like certain the existence of certain like hidden locations like Atlantis. What really is Antarctica? Is it really filled with just penguins? Like, why is it that nobody can ever fly an airplane over Antarctica? Is there some sort of field there that would cause it to disappear? Like, all that stuff was stuff I was really interested in when I was little. So this stuff was really, really hitting home. I was like, bro, hold on, are we about to figure out, are the people in this world and us as viewers about to figure out that Zemuria does not stop, or the world of this series does not stop at Zemuria, that the world goes even further beyond? What is that beyond? Now, when we see a character like McBurn, we have to believe that the world beyond has to be something supernatural. There's no way it's not. There's no way it's not. And then that's whenever we start talking about the shadows. And that's whenever we start talking about Phantasmagoria. And that's why I believe that Sky the Third might just be the most important game in the series. Because if we start seeing these characters pop up again, if the concept of immortals is a possibility in this world, that can only exist if these characters were a part of something like a Phantasmagoria. Were a part of something where their bodies could live on, their spirits could live on, and take up like these vessels and whatnot, right? If all these things can exist within this world, then another alternate world, or another world that exists beyond, as stated by McBurn, then it has to have some sort of connection to what was stated in the third. It has to, bro. Which is why I can't wait to go back and I think actually, honestly, I'm going to go and rewatch a lot of those scenes from the game before I play Hajimari, just in case. Especially with the way this game ended, and because of the cover art of the next game, I have to. I feel like I have to. Now, my brain has been constantly thinking about these possibilities, and I love it, and I think that's why I call this my One Piece of games, because this is what I do with One Piece. Think about the Void Sentry all the time, the Will of D, what is the One Piece, all that stuff. Now Trails has that. I mean, it's just an eye-opening experience. A completely eye-opening experience. Because I had been wondering, especially after the end of SC, and then during the third, like, I know this is a post-apocalyptic world. I know that the world once flourished. I know that at one point in time it had all this technology. They went through the Great Collapse, and they're still currently building from the ground up. But then they start bringing up characters like Epstein and the Orbments, and I'm like, what does all this mean, son? And so that's where my brain has been at when it comes to that type of stuff. We'll talk about the Grandmaster here in a second. But first, before I talk about the Grandmaster, because I want to end off on that, because that is, we're going to carry right into Hajimari with that baby. But, so before we get into the Grandmaster and the secret final ending and stuff like that, the actual ending itself, the final boss against Osborne was magnificent. Majestic Roar, I played through it twice. On the second playthrough, I had a much easier experience the first time because I didn't know what I was getting into. I was like, holy flag, this is hard. But on the second playthrough, I pwned him, and then the Divine Knight battle was so much fun. A Majestic Roar is such a magnificent soundtrack. And then after that, and on the first ending, I was so shook. I was scarred by that first ending, man. You know, seeing Rean take all that onto himself, seeing Rean and Osborne alone in that one world together as they go at it. And then Juice is just like, yo, where's Milliam? And I had goosebumps. I was like, don't tell me Milliam just died. And then Volumar and Rean, they come to a decision. You see the things start taking over. He's like, yo, I'm gonna have to take this up into space. That's the only way that I can free everyone of this curse. You know, it's by taking myself out with it. And I honestly was starting to believe that this was going to be the case, because throughout the entire game, they were sprinkling the fact that Rean might not make it to the end. And this is where I start talking about Rean and Volumar and the stuff that happened in Michelin. Now, in Michelin, right before the ending, you had the most incredible character interactions You could talk to any of them. You could see any of them. That's where Olivier proposes to Scheherazade. That's where you get to see all of the really cool moments with like Estelle and Joshua and Ren and the special support section together, Tio and her love for Mishi and all that stuff, right? But here's where you get your final bonding events. Here's where you get all this incredible stuff. But there's this one particular moment where Rean fights his inner self, where Cassius is dressed up as him in order to pass the exam required in order to become a divine blade. And this entire section was super beautiful to me because it just put the entire journey into perspective for me, where you utilize all of your forms and all of these things in order to defeat yourself. And so once you defeat yourself in this thing that he himself has been trying to defeat this entire time, and it was so fitting that Class 7 had to defeat him, and now you have to defeat the one person that you fear the most, which is yourself, before you get the title of Divine Blade, and before you go out and take and save the world. So you do that. Cassius congratulates you. Everybody congratulates you. But then you have this moment where you go back to Volumar, and Volumar is pretty much saying like, "Yo, man, like you did it. Like, you did it, man. I'm so proud." And so whenever you get to the end of the game, and then first time around, it's him and Volumar that go up. And it explodes, thing hits, credits, everybody's like, no, Rean, why? And then Crow, of course, goes up with him, Milliam goes up with the two of them, like, yo, we're gonna go out and we're gonna save the world together. It's like, yo, I love y'all so much, and we'll see each other somewhere, someplace. And whenever they say, we'll see each other again somewhere, someplace, that is a line that's been stated so many times. It honestly just makes me believe about this whole multiple timelines thing, and this whole multiple worlds concept, like. But anyways, regardless, it's like almost like they knew. But they go up, they explode, credits hit. I was scarred for an entire day because I had to replay this entire section to get the actual true ending. I get to the true ending, and this entire section continues to blow my mind back to back to back. First of all, you had amazing moments with Rean, Osborne, and Arianrod, and Rutger, where it's them and their ghostly forms. Osborne has his final conversation with Rean, which just killed me, man. I was like, flagnards. The homunculus starts taking over, and then you have a moment where it's Rean with Milliam in his hand against the homunculus, and he pwns it. He pwns it using that incredible Breaking Dawn S-craft, and he gets some really cool choreography. It looks super dope, but he pwns it. He finally gets rid of that stupid thing after the final boss battle in the true ending. And the final boss battle in the true ending is so cool. You get to like customize your own party and in different ways, and it's kind of like the boss battle from the third, where you're fighting like all these different sides. It reminds me of the one from Final Fantasy VII, where during the Genova fight, you're commanding like different parts of your party. You can do with Kefka and whatnot, right? So you're commanding different parts of your party in order to take out this one massive threat. But so that entire portion was so much fun, like being able to use all those different characters. And of course, on my first playthrough at least, I went with the squad: Rean, Lloyd, Estelle, Crow. I was like, yo, that's gotta be the first squad. And then I balanced out everybody else and made everybody equally OP and defeated the final boss. But in the midst of all of that and all stuff going down, you start wondering, you're like, yo, Crow's about to leave us. Like, Crow's about to die. There's no way he's gonna escape that fate, right? And same thing with Milliam. And so they start having their final moments. I'm already choking up. I'm like, nah, man, I love these characters too much, but I don't want them to die. And so you have a situation where Rean wants to save them. They don't know what to do. And then on the first ending, when this exact same thing was happening, Black Oberreich shows up and pretty much tells you that you're screwed. But in the second ending, Franz shows up. And he, with the other 7 Divine Knights, give their lives in order to save Milliam and Crow. And consequently, everyone around them too. And this stuff hits so hard because, number one, with Franz and Elisa and that entire situation between the two of them and their final conversation, and seeing that that's why his character had to exist, was for this very moment. And it just really brought everything into fruition. That was such a beautiful scene. But the final words and lines between Volumar and Rean, I think, was the hardest that I think I shed tears while playing this game. Because like I said, Valimar had been with Rean through everything. Rean had gone through so much in this story, and the one individual, the one thing that had been with him, even more than Selene, in those moments when nobody else was there with him, was Valimar. It was always Rean and Valimar. Anytime he needed to get out of a situation, he'd might call Valimar. Anytime it's just the two of them, like Valimar for him is the equivalent of like that one best friend that you could tell anything to. Like that one, or your inner thoughts. Whenever you're writing your inner thoughts that you don't share with anybody, that's what Valimar is to Rean. And so the fact that we're about to lose Valimar, the one individual who for so long had been with Rean, but now he understood, like, Rean, you've grown so much, you yourself was able to use that blade. You didn't even need me to use Millium in order to take out the homunculus. Like, yo, I'm so proud of you. You became a divine blade. You've grown so much, Rean. Even though I'm a machine, I'm so proud of the man that you've become. All of those lines, bro, I was balling so hard, man. I was like, dog, I just, man, dude, Rean and Valimar's relationship is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. I always love whenever an author will emphasize the relationship between a master and his blade, or a person and their weapon, whatever. It's something along those lines, right? I always love that type of stuff. And in this one, where it is a mech that also has a consciousness of its own, and just there was one really cool portion during the Dracos fight where his final S-craft is so cool for Osborne and Dracos, where he's like, yo, Valimar to me, and I was like, oh, flag. So then Valimar and him have a conversation. But to see Valimar and Rean in their final moment, man, I mean, just right now, it makes me want to choke up just thinking about it. It was truly a moment that really, really hit home. And so, they go out, everything's been saved, they were able to stop the curse. Then you get into the post-credits scene, man, or I should say into the credits scene. In the credit sequence, you first start off in a similar way that you do with the other games, where you get like a sort of thing showing you what's happening elsewhere around the world, and some really fascinating stuff, like what's happening in Calvard with President Rocksmith and whatnot, or Emetheria. It was like, I can't wait to get to that stuff later on the line. The most notable stuff that really made me emotional was seeing the Liberal Bracer Guild and the Erebonian Guild back and moving. You got to see all the little frames. Like you saw Zin and Fee. You got to see, what was it, Sarah and Adios. And, of course, Estelle and Joshua. And everyone else there in their Bracer Guild. And then you got to see the ones with, like, Rufus being apprehended. And you got to see Claire and Lecter, and the fact that they weren't arrested. So you get to see stuff like that, what's happening still around the world, and like Reganus is doing his thing, the Emperor, how Calvert is not going to go in rebuttal against the Empire because of their strength and forces, and stuff like that. But then you get to, man, dude, when I saw that scene, I just stared at it for like 2 minutes, bro, because it hit so hard. You get this one sequence where you see Risha, Sully, and Ilya once again performing for Arkansas. And then around them you see like Dudley, you see Randy, you see all of them, Noel, Fran, all of them from Crossbell. And then the following thing it says, and thanks to the special support section, Crossbow regained its independence. And I was like, man, they had gone through so much to do that, bro. They had been labeled as criminals, they had been exiled, everything. From the beginning of Zero up until this point in time. They went from being known as legends, still known as legends, and as these heroes, but also as criminals, to being the ones to finally bring independence back to Crossville. I was like, yo, that was so goat. That was so beautiful, bro. I really, really love that scene. And man, dude, and then after that, you get to see Millium, and the way that she was able to be brought back after we see final words from Fran, where he's like, yo, I'll leave a surprise for y'all in the workshop tubes. And then Millium returns back into her actual self. That was such a touching and beautiful moment. Then you get the final end credits, man, and the end credits of the game for me were the most emotional end credits I have ever experienced, bro. I mean, when you start off with Olivier and Sherazard's wedding, and you see the two of them, it's nothing but happiness and pure joy. I was so giddy throughout the entire thing, and seeing everyone in the way that they were. I have a picture saved from every single slide. I saved all of them, And just seeing there was some with the boys, the girls, the squads. They would emphasize on certain ones, like with Ren and Tita. Emphasis on Kevin and Rias. That was really cool. Olivier with Rean, or Olivier with Estelle and Joshua. You would see like the princesses, Alphine, Chloe, and now Sherazade. It's like I believe Sherazarde's a princess now, bro, with Olivier. Like that's so good. Like their relationship was so awesome in the original games. Like to see this, I was like, yes, like let's go. And to see all the characters that were there and made an appearance to, like the characters that I never would expect to be there, like a Claire and whatnot. Like just to see them there and with them, it makes me so happy. Lecter, finally, being able to be back with Chloe and whatnot, and we'll see where that takes them. But then also like characters like the Growls Ritter being there, and like Kevin and whatnot. And then you would see the little moments with like Rean and his class, and then you would see the special support section and them and how they were celebrating. That one really made me emotional. Then later on as it progressed, you got to see some more specific on the ones from Cold Steel. Well, before that, you got to see this one really cool one with Aurelia, Tobal, and Ein. I was like, yeah, Ein and Aurelia, nice. And then she reminded me of the drinking game from the Michelin stuff. That was hilarious. And then you got to go through and see some more of those pictures, but the last few were really, really hitting me, man. Because you get this one shot of Rean by himself. The Trails of Cold Steel has reached its conclusion, man. Thank you for turning to the end. It shows Rean looking fresh. And then next to him, Alyssa, Elliot, the whole class 7. I was like, no, don't do this, bro. And then it shows the girls, the boys, and you have this one really nice shot of Crow. I was like, yo, Crow and Rean in the picture, bro. Like, he's supposed to be dead. Like, they're supposed to be here. You got a really nice shot of Toa and Crow and Angie and George. I was like, bro, they made it. They made it, bro. Like, they made it. And then Rean with his new class 7, and then eventually ends off with the entire class together. See you somewhere someday. And originally I thought this was the full ending of the game, bro. I was in a pool of my own tears. I hit up all of my friends that finished the game. I was like, bro, peak fiction, man, peak literature. It was so good. And I've rewatched that final scene several times because it's just filled with, the music is out of this world. It's like another version of Although the Warmth is Small, which is one of my favorite soundtracks in the entire series at this point. Definitely my favorite soundtrack in this game. But then you get in the finale they use like another version of that, and just seeing those ending credits themes. I mean, and that was the perfect send off, the perfect ending to this game. And then Laz hits me up. He's like, "Yo, can you get a Discord call? There's still one more thing you have to experience." And I was like, "I beg your pardon? Are you sure? What could be beyond that? What could be beyond that?" Little did I know that after the ending credit scene, after the credits, is a post-credit scene back in the Room of Legends with the Anguis, the same room from the 3rd. Except now Maria Bell is there. Campy is once again there. The Anguises are discussing amongst themselves. And then she shows up. Now, I had my voices on while playing all the games. So during the 3rd, when the Grandmaster spoke, I was immediately able to say, okay, this is either a woman or it's a child. I was immediately able to say that. Grandmaster is either a woman or a child. In this game, though, you get to hear, I don't know if this was intentional on some Metal Gear Solid 5 stuff, but this time you can definitely discern from the moment that she appears that it is a woman. And I was just like, oh God. Because when I first heard her voice, I was like, hold on. Okay, she's just gonna be floating, you're gonna hear a floating character. But when I actually saw her, and when I saw the blue hair, every single hair in my body stood. And I was in a Discord call with Laz. And I mean, I hit the floor. I was looking up, and I was like, okay, am I experiencing this? The Grandmaster starts talking. And I gotta pull this stuff out, bro. I gotta pull this stuff out. Because I have rewatched this scene a good 15 times. A good 15 times, bro. First of all, just look at her. How in the flying flagnards is that the cover of a Trails game? Like, Hajimari is gonna be mad. Are you kidding me? Regardless. Where is, I have so many pictures. So, right here we have the Grandmaster. My neighbor, you have done very well. No, this is right here. This is the line that really had me thinking, bro. This is what I was talking about earlier. Grandmaster says, "No, I am but a shadow. I exist solely to announce the appointed time to the world." The first time I read this, I was like, yo, somebody said this in the third. I was like, there's somebody in this verse that said this in the third. It didn't click at first. When I watched it the second time, and I was like, shadow, shadow, who said shadow? I leaped out my chair, and I was like, it was Celeste. It was Celeste D. Auslis. I was like, oh God. Like, bro, legit, like, every cell in my being started shaking. She was the only other one that said something similar to that. I am but a shadow. You don't have to worry about me. I am but a shadow. They had the same hair color. They pretty much looked the same from what I remember. What does that mean? What does that mean, dog? What does it even entail? I know that Ouroboros has a connection to all of that stuff because of what happened at the end of SC and the lore and the Liber Arc being the interest that was there. I know that there was something there, man. But the fact that they look so similar, that they stated the same things, what does that mean? What in the world does that mean? We don't know the Grandmaster's name. Imagine she states, I am Celeste D. Auslis. Like, flagnards. Flagnards. And this is why I say that the third is probably going to be the most important game in the series from here on out, man. Seriously. Seriously. I don't know, man. And then right after that, she states that this third stage of the Orpheus plan, the eternal recurrence plan, begins now. And that's how you end Cold Steel 4. Going into Hajimari, where she is on the flipping cover. And like, just like that, I ended one saga. Couldn't be happier with the conclusion to one of the greatest story arcs ever. And immediately in the post arc, just like One Piece does, my interest is immediately gauged for what's about to happen next. Right after this, I'm gonna put this video, and I'm gonna figure out how to buy Hajimari, and then I'm in the Lex for more. But man, dude, what a game, what a franchise. Just wow, bro. And the music, man. But if there's any takeaways that you can get from this, man, it's that this game was absolutely incredible from start to finish. Rean has become one of my favorite characters ever. Lloyd and Estelle, their greatness continued to grow even higher in this game, as every other character did, especially Olivier, man, as well too, bro. There's so many wonderful characters. The new Class 7, the old Class 7, they all shine so much. So many incredible moments and scenes. So many things to think about with like Ouroboros and where they're gonna go from here. So many eye-opening lines. What is beyond Zemuria? What do they mean by other worlds and this world? We're talking about Phantasmagoria, other timelines, other verses. What are we talking about here? And then the Grand Master. The Grand Flipping Master. Like, what, bro? Listen, man, because I'm a fan of One Piece and Conan and these series that have yet to reveal who certain characters are, who like these darked out characters who are leaders of organizations are, I'm like, I wasn't expecting to see who the Grandmaster was for years. Years. To see the Grandmaster with my own 2 eyes, like, I still barely, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. I was talking to Laz in a Discord call, and I was just losing my mind. I was like, what is going on? Why is the Grandmaster in my presence? Or I should say, why am I in the Grandmaster's presence? The most ominous, the most respected, the most everything. The Grandmaster is so legendary and is so incredible that characters like Arianrod, Vita, Mariabel, McBurn, though McBurn was kind of fooled, Lewe, all of these legends that we have known in Ouroboros. And even the characters who go against Ouroboros, they all state the same thing. Like, yo, we go against everyone else, but not against her. We follow her. We follow her. So I'm like, what is she, bro? She feels like the main character of a story. We're like, yo, I may not agree with the people under you, but with you, me. I follow you. And it's like all these characters that have such, their personalities are either that they would never bow to anyone, or they would never succumb to being below anybody else. Characters like Mariabel and Wiseman and like all these characters that you would never expect to be under anybody, and yet they're under this individual. Like, who in the flying flag lords is the Grandmaster? And that's how I'm gonna leave this off, man. Cold Steel 4, the highest possible tier that could ever give a video game. So incredible. This whole story of Cold Steel 3 and 4, I think, is my favorite overall gaming experience I think I've ever had. And Cold Steel 4 and like the entire Trail series, of course, is my favorite thing I've experienced this year. But culminating in Cold Steel 4, and of course I'm going to play Hajimari, but culminating in Cold Steel 4, man, up until this point, it's just, what a journey, what a series. And I can't wait to see what Trails has next, man. I thank you if you've listened to the very end of this, another long video, another King Recon the movie when it comes to Trails. But at this point, man, I can't help it, dude. There's just so many things to talk about with each game. And there's so many things I didn't even get a chance to talk about. But I knew it was going to happen, and I wanted to talk about just the things that I really wanted to talk about in this one, man. So I thank y'all so much from the bottom of my heart. Y'all have an awesome day. Take care. Trails of Cold Steel 4, awesome sauce. Let me know what y'all thought about this video game in the comment section down below. And I will see y'all to talk about the awesome sauce in the comment section. And yeah, man, what a game. Rean the GOAT. And the Grandmaster, the Beyond, bro, other worlds. Y'all can't tell me Sky the Third isn't important, bro.